It's 3 in the morning. The world is asleep. But you are not sleeping. Because somewhere deep inside you, beneath the excuses, beneath the comfort, beneath everything you've been told you deserve, something is broken. And you know it. You've been waiting. Waiting for someone to notice. Waiting for someone to reach out. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for conditions to be perfect. Waiting for permission from a world that was never going to give it. But I need you to hear this. And I need you to really hear it, not just process it as words on a screen. Nobody is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your friends, not the government, not the person you're hoping will finally see your potential and hand you the opportunity you've been waiting for. Not God reaching down from the sky to lift you from your circumstances. Nobody. And the moment you truly understand that, not intellectually, not as a concept, but in your bones, in your chest, in the part of you that makes decisions at 3 in the morning, that is the moment your life begins. David Goggins did not start as a warrior. He started as a victim. And I don't say that as an insult. I say it because it's true, and because the distance between where he started and where he ended up is the entire point of this story. Goggins was born into violence. His father was a man named Goggins, a man who beat his mother, beat his children, and built a world inside their home where fear was the primary language. Young David watched things no child should ever see. He absorbed cruelty as if it were normal, because for him it was. There was no before. There was no version of childhood that existed without the shadow of that man. Eventually, his mother fled. She took David and his brother to a small town in Indiana, a place where the winters were long and brutal, and the future felt like something that happened to other people. And there, in that town, in that cold, with that history living inside him, David Goggins began to disappear. He developed a stutter. His hair started falling out in patches from stress. He struggled in school. He was isolated. He was poor. He was carrying a weight of trauma that most adults would collapse under. And he was doing it as a child with no tools and no map and no one telling him it was going to be okay. By the time he was a young man, he was 300 pounds. Not 300 pounds and thriving. 300 pounds and broken. Working a night job exterminating cockroaches in restaurants, driving a beat-up truck, going home every morning covered in chemicals and shame, watching infomercials about Navy SEALs on television and feeling the distance between that image and his own reflection like a physical wound. This is where most stories end. This is where most people accept the narrative that has been written for them. They look at their circumstances, the poverty, the trauma, the weight, the failure, the years already lost, and they make a decision, usually quietly, usually without even realizing they're making it. They decide that this is just who they are. And here is what I need you to understand about that decision. It is not weakness. It is human. It is what almost every person on earth does when the gap between where they are and where they want to be feels too large to cross. They explain it instead of changing it. They say, I had a hard childhood. Nobody helped me. The system failed me. I never had the opportunities other people had. I tried once, and it didn't work. I'm too old. I'm too damaged. I started too late. And maybe all of that is true. Maybe every single one of those things is completely, verifiably, objectively true. But Goggins, sitting in that truck covered in pesticides, watching those men on television who had built themselves into something he could barely imagine, Goggins asked himself a different question. Not why did this happen to me, but what am I going to do about it? That shift, that single, almost invisible shift in the question, from why to what, is the entire foundation of everything that came after. The victim asks why. The victim collects evidence of their wounds and presents it to the world as an explanation for why they cannot move forward. And the world nods, because the wounds are real, and real wounds deserve acknowledgement. But acknowledgement is not transformation. The warrior asks what? The warrior looks at the same wounds, the same poverty, the same trauma, the same failures, and instead of building a case, builds a plan. You have wounds. Every person listening to this has wounds. Some of them are so deep and so old that they have become part of how you understand yourself. I am not asking you to pretend they don't exist. I am not asking you to perform happiness or manufacture false positivity or convince yourself that the hard things that happen to. There's a practice that changed everything for Goggins. He calls it the accountability mirror. Every morning, he would stand in front of his bathroom mirror and he wouldn't look away. He looked himself directly in the eyes and he told himself the truth. Not the comfortable truth, the real truth. You are lazy. You quit yesterday. You lied to yourself again. You are not who you pretend to be. Most people cannot survive that conversation. Most people look away. But here's what Goggins discovered. The mirror doesn't lie. And the person you see in that mirror, that's your real competition. Not your coworker, not your neighbor, not the person you follow on social media. You versus you. That's the only fight that matters. And every single day, you either win it or you lose it. There is no draw. Post-it notes. That's how Goggins started. He put post-it notes on his mirror. His goals, his fears, his excuses, written down, exposed, made real. Not as motivation, as accountability. Because when you write it down and put it where you have to see it every morning, you can't pretend it doesn't exist. The mirror becomes your judge. And your judge has no mercy. In 2005, Goggins decided to become a Navy SEAL. He had zero military background. He was 100 pounds overweight. He had a congenital heart defect. He had 3 weeks to lose the weight and pass the preliminary test. Any rational person would have told him it was impossible. And they would have been right, by the standards of rational people. But Goggins had discovered something that most human beings spend their entire lives running from. Suffering is not the enemy. Suffering is the doorway. Every time you feel like stopping, that's not your body failing. That's your mind lying to you. Your body can take almost anything. It's your mind that quits first. He calls it the 40% rule. When your mind tells you that you're done, that you've given everything, that you physically cannot go one more step, you are at 40% of your actual capacity. 40%. You still have 60% left. 60% of your strength, your endurance, your willpower, sitting untouched. Think about what that means for your life. Every time you stopped, every project you abandoned, every relationship you gave up on, every dream you buried because it got hard, you stopped at 40%. You had 60% more to give, and you chose comfort instead. The wall is not the end. The wall is where most people stop, which means if you go through it, you have almost no competition on the other side. There will be days when you have nothing left. Not metaphorically, literally nothing. Days when you wake up and the weight of everything you're carrying is so heavy that getting out of bed feels like climbing a mountain. Days when the progress you've been working toward is completely invisible. Days when the voice inside your head, the one that tells you to stop, to quit, to go back to comfortable, is louder than any external voice you've ever heard. On those days, most people collapse. On those days, Goggins reaches into the cookie jar. Not a real jar, a mental one. Let me explain what that means. The cookie jar is a concept Goggins developed during one of the darkest moments of his life. He was running the Badwater Ultra Marathon, 135 miles through Death Valley, in temperatures over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. His feet were destroyed. His body was shutting down. His mind was screaming at him to stop. And in that moment, he didn't think about the finish line. He didn't think about the crowd. He didn't think about the medal. He reached back into his memory, into every hard thing he had ever survived. He thought about the nights he trained alone when everyone else was sleeping. He thought about SEAL training, Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous physical and mental torture with less than 4 hours of sleep total. He thought about the 100-mile race he ran with stress fractures in both legs, his feet bleeding inside his shoes, his kidneys starting to fail. And he kept going. He pulled those memories out one by one, like reaching into a jar and pulling out a cookie. And each memory said the same thing. You have been here before. You survived that. You will survive this. That is the cookie jar. And here's what makes it different from ordinary motivation. Motivation is borrowed. It comes from outside, from a speech, a song, a video, someone else's story. It feels powerful in the moment, but motivation fades. It always fades, because it was never yours to begin with. The cookie jar is earned. Every single thing inside it, you put it there. With your own suffering, with your own sacrifice, with your own choice to keep going when every rational part of your brain told you to stop. Nobody can take that from you. Nobody can argue with it. Nobody can tell you it didn't happen. Because you were there, you felt it, you survived it, and now it lives inside you forever. But here is the hard truth that most people don't want to hear. You cannot reach into a jar that you never filled. If you have spent your life avoiding hard things, if every time it got uncomfortable, you found a way out, a shortcut, an excuse, then when the real moment of crisis comes, when life hits you with something that cannot be escaped or negotiated with, you will reach into that jar and find it empty. And that emptiness will break you, not because you're weak, but because you never gave yourself the chance to discover how strong you actually are. So start now, today, not with something dramatic, not with a 100-mile race or military training. Start with the thing you've been avoiding this week, the conversation you've been putting off, the workout you keep skipping, the project you start and abandon every time it gets difficult. Do that thing. Finish it. Not perfectly. Just finish it. And then put that in your jar. One deposit. That's all you need to start, because the jar doesn't fill itself overnight. It fills slowly, one hard choice at a time, one moment of choosing discipline over comfort, one day of staying when everything in you wants to run. And over months, over years, over a lifetime of choosing hard, you build something unbreakable inside you. Not a person who never suffers, a person who suffers and reaches into the jar and keeps going anyway. That is the cookie jar. That is the weapon Goggins built inside himself, and it is available to every single one of you, but only if you're willing to fill it. Here is the cost nobody warns you about. Not the physical cost, not the early mornings or the brutal training or the moments when your body is screaming at you to stop. The cost nobody talks about is this: when you decide to become something different, when you decide to stop accepting mediocrity as your standard. People leave. Not always dramatically, not always with a fight or a confrontation or a goodbye. Sometimes they just drift away. They stop calling as much. They stop inviting you to things. They make jokes about how serious you've become, how obsessed you are, how you've changed. They say it like it's a bad thing, like becoming more is somehow a betrayal of who you were. And it hurts. It hurts in a way that no physical suffering can match. Because you can train your body to handle pain. You can build calluses on your hands and toughness in your legs and endurance in your lungs. But nobody prepares you for the silence of a phone that used to ring. Nobody prepares you for sitting in a room full of people you've known for years and feeling completely, utterly alone. Goggins calls this the lonely chapter, and it is. It is profoundly, achingly, completely lonely. But here is what he discovered about that loneliness. And this is the part that changes everything if you really let it sink in. Their leaving is not a punishment. It is a signal. When people drift away from you as you grow, it is not because you did something wrong. It is because your growth is making their stagnation impossible to ignore. Think about what happens in the mind of someone who watches you wake up at 4 a.m. while they sleep until noon. They don't think, wow, that's impressive. I should do that too. Most people don't think that way. Most people think, who does he think he is? Why is he making this so complicated? Why can't he just be normal? Because your discipline is a mirror for their lack of it. Your focus makes their distraction feel like a choice rather than a default. Your refusal to accept average forces them to confront the fact that they have accepted it. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. And rather than face that, rather than ask themselves the hard question that your transformation puts in front of them, they leave, they drift, and you are left alone. Now, here is where most people make the critical mistake. Most people, when they feel that loneliness, when they feel the drift of the people they love, when they feel the silence where connection used to be, they slow down, they dial back, they make themselves smaller. They return to familiar patterns and comfortable mediocrity because the alternative, being fully themselves, fully committed, fully on the path, costs too much in human connection. They choose belonging over becoming. Don't do that. Goggins didn't do that. And it cost him. It cost him relationships. It cost him comfort. It cost him the easy version of a life surrounded by people who never challenged him. But what he gained was something those people will never have. He gained a self he could actually respect. He gained proof, real, undeniable, lived proof, that he was not going to let the fear of loneliness determine the size of his life. And here is the truth about the lonely chapter that nobody tells you until you're on the other side of it. It ends. Not because the world changes, not because suddenly everyone understands, but because as you keep walking your path, as you keep making the deposits, as you keep choosing hard, as you keep becoming, you begin to attract people who are doing the same. Not many. This is not a popularity contest. The path is still narrow. The people on it are still few. But the ones you find there, the ones who are also walking their lonely road, who are also paying the cost, who are also choosing becoming over belonging, those people become your real tribe. Not the tribe you were born into. Not the tribe that was comfortable and familiar and never asked anything of you. The tribe you earned. And that tribe, small as it is worth every moment of the silence that came before it. So if you are in the lonely chapter right now, if you are feeling the drift, the silence, the cold space where connection used to be, hear this. You are not doing something wrong. You are doing something right. Keep going. The path gets less lonely, but only if you don't stop walking it. There is a question that David Goggins asks. He asks it to the men who are breaking, to the men who are looking around the room waiting for someone else to step up, to the men who are hoping that today, just today, someone else will carry the weight. He asks it quietly. But when you hear it, it hits like something physical. Who is going to carry the boats? Let me give you the context. In Navy SEAL training, there is an exercise where teams of men must carry heavy inflatable boats on their heads for miles, through sand, through surf, through exhaustion so complete that the body stops feeling like your own. And at some point in that exercise, every single time, there is a moment where the team starts to fracture, where the weight becomes too much, where individuals begin to drift, to slow, to quietly let someone else bear more than their share. And it is in that moment that a leader has to emerge, not because they were assigned to, not because someone gave them permission, but because someone has to, because the boat doesn't carry itself, because the mission doesn't complete itself, because the hard thing doesn't get done unless someone decides, right now, in this moment of maximum difficulty, that they are going to be the one. Who is going to carry the boats? Goggins asks this question not just about physical training. He asks it about your life. Who is going to do the hard thing in your family when everyone else is avoiding it? Who is going to have the conversation nobody wants to have? Who is going to make the sacrifice that needs to be made? Who is going to wake up first, stay up latest, push hardest, and refuse to let the important things fall apart? Who is going to carry the boats? Because here is what Goggins discovered, and what I need you to really sit with. Most people are waiting. They are waiting for conditions to be perfect. They are waiting for motivation to arrive. They are waiting for someone to notice them, to choose them, to give them permission to be great. They are waiting for a leader to emerge. And the tragedy, the real tragedy, is that the leader they are waiting for is them. It has always been them. You have been waiting for yourself. And every day you spend waiting is a day the boat sits on the ground, a day the mission stalls, a day your life stays exactly where it is while the person you could be stands at a distance, watching, wondering when you are finally going to decide to show up. So let me ask you directly, not rhetorically, not as a motivational device. I am asking you right now, in this moment, who is going to carry the boats in your life? Who is going to wake up tomorrow and choose differently? Who is going to stop explaining and start executing? Who is going to stop asking for perfect conditions and start moving in imperfect ones? Who is going to stop being the person who almost did something great and start being the person who actually did? The answer has to be you, not because you are special, not because the universe has chosen you above others, but because you are here, because you listened this far, because something in you, despite the comfort, despite the excuses, despite everything that has tried to convince you that this is too hard or you are too late or it doesn't matter anyway, something in you has not given up. And that something is everything. Nobody is coming to save you. The suffering is yours. The loneliness is yours. The hard mornings and the empty jar and the long road with no one walking beside you, all of it is yours. But so is the transformation. So is the unshakable knowledge of what you are made of. So is the life you are going to build. Not the one that was handed to you, not the one that was easy, not the one that looked good from the outside while feeling hollow from within, but the real one, the earned one, the one that costs everything and gives back more than you ever imagined possible. Carry the boats. Do it when no one is watching. Do it when you are exhausted. Do it when the weight is unfair and the path is unclear and the people you expected to help you have already gone home. Do it because it needs to be done. Do it because you are the one who showed up. Do it because one day, not today, maybe not for a long time, you will stand somewhere high and you will look back at the road you walked and you will know with absolute certainty that you did not waste the one life you were given. That is the Goggins philosophy. That is nobody coming to save you. That is the beginning of everything. Stay hard.